91 millions, disait Pierre. That was the first sentence on the screen. Not stolen, not hacked, moved legally through a clause no one voted on, written by a team, no one elected, signed just weeks before a Supreme Court justice was confirmed. Her name, Amy Coney Barrett. And tonight, Jasmine Crockett isn't here to make accusations. She's here to ask one question. If you wrote the rule that made it legal to steal those that make you innocent, stay right here. Because what you're about to hear wasn't supposed to reach the public. It started with one line on a screen, a number 91 million. That was the amount quietly moved from a federal education fund, not stolen in the dead of night, not laundered through foreign banks, but approved by a clause no one remembered voting on. Clause 32a. The chamber went still as Jasmine Crockett stood up. She didn't shout. She didn't raise her fist. She simply pointed to the slide on the screen behind her and said, "Your Honors, I'm not here to disrespect a Supreme Court justice. I'm just here to ask one question. Who wrote this clause and who benefited from it?" No one moved because everyone knew what was coming. You could feel it, like a storm building in the air, heavy and unavoidable. That moment when the room realizes this isn't just another hearing, this is a reckoning, a shattering of secrets long buried for over a decade. Clause 32A sat buried in federal policy, dressed in legal jargon, passed without noise, and for over a decade, 91 million originally meant to rebuild schools in forgotten rural towns was redirected. Not once, not accidentally, but with precision, with structure, with intent. And somehow, one name kept circling back, not printed in bold, not signed at the bottom, but they're woven between metadata, draft document, advisory memos. Amy Coney Barrett. At the time, just a name behind the legal team of a nonprofit initiative. Later, a Supreme Court justice with the power to define what lawful really means. Jasmine Crockett didn't accuse. She didn't even raise her tone. She let the screen speak. She let the number scream. 91 million. Diverted. Sanctioned. Legalized. And now, finally, someone was asking what no one dared ask before. If you write the rules that allow the money to disappear, are you still innocent just because you didn't touch the cash? Stay with us because what happens next will make you question how justice is written and who it's really written for. Years ago, Congress passed an emergency education fund aimed directly at schools that had no running water, no working internet, no teachers willing to stay more than a year. It was meant to be simple. Money from Washington, straight to rural classrooms. No middlemen, no politics. But somewhere along the way, 91 million vanished from that path. It didn't go to textbooks. It didn't fix crumbling walls or provide free lunches. Instead, it took a detour through a labyrinth of nonprofit organizations. At first glance, they looked legitimate. Educational equity networks, faith-based outreach programs, all with inspiring names and glossy websites. But follow the money trail, and you'll see the cash circling back to a single entity, the Center for Family Excellence. Not a school, not a training center, but a political advocacy group tied to far-right interests. And here's where the story twists like a knife in the dark. The reroute wasn't an error. It was legal because someone had already written in the escape clause, Clause 32a, a provision buried 200 catters pages deep in a federal education bill. It allowed funds to be strategically redirected to nonprofits that support moral and civic advancement. Vague. Yes. Intentional. Absolutely. No. Oversight Committee flagged it. No audit was triggered because Clause 32A was designed to protect itself, and the fingerprints on its legal foundation led straight back to a now familiar figure. Before she wore the black robe of the highest court, Amy Coney Barrett worked as lead legal advisor for a policy consortium connected to the Center for Family Excellence. That same consortium helped draft the language that became Clause 32A. That same network benefited once the funds were rerouted. They didn't need to hide the money. They just needed to redefine where it could go, and redefine it. They did one clause at a time. That's how injustice looks in 2025. It doesn't always break the law. Sometimes it is the law. And for the schools that lost their funding, there was no warning, no explanation, Just silence and empty classrooms. Picture this. A third grader in Kentucky huddled in a coat during class because her school had no working heater that winter. Her building one of the first on the list to lose funding after Clause 32A kicked in, turning dreams of warmth and learning into a daily struggle against the cold. Now, one voice was breaking that silence. Jasmine Crockett wasn't chasing a headline. She was chasing a question. If the law is used to justify betrayal, then what is justice even worth? Keep listening, because the next document she reveals will take us straight into the heart of a cover-up that began long before Barrett ever sat on the bench. For years, Clause 32A was treated like just another footnote, a technicality, a piece of harmless legal language in an ocean of federal policy, until a document surfaced, dated the 12th of August, 2016, marked internal only, do not distribute. It was a draft memo from a policy group called Constitution Forward, a think tank that marketed itself as a neutral legal advisory board, but inside its walls, something very different was taking shape, something sinister, brewing in the shadows. Jasmine Crockett read the first line aloud on the record. This clause protects our side.